I'm going to show you absolutely everything you need to know to succeed as a balanced druid in Mists of Pandaria Classic. We're going to start off now with what class, or race should I say, you should actually go with if you want to min-max. Well, if you are Horde, I would recommend Troll. The reason being, we get a buff called Berserking, which on a 3-minute cooldown will increase your spell haste by 20% for 10 seconds, and it is incredibly strong when paired with our other cooldowns. Troll also gives you beast slaying. They're not too common, but you'll encounter some here and there, which is just a great bonus to get as well. If you are going Alliance, however, I would recommend Worgen due to the passive viciousness, giving you an extra 1% movement, 1% critical strike, and a short movement speed boost with an ability called Dark Flight. They're not absolutely amazing. However, our only other choices are going to be Night Elf, which doesn't really give as much as we'd get with Worgen with the crit. If you are Horde, however, as a Troll, then you have lucked out. Moving on to the talents, we don't actually have much that's very useful for our DPS as balance. Some of these are much more useful for someone like a Restoration Druid. So, number 1, we have at level 15, Feline Swiftness. This is the one I would go with because it increases your movement speed by 15%, meaning you can get around much faster on boss fights and get out of stuff faster. There is Wild Charge, which gives you a few different benefits depending on what you are shapeshifted into, but considering the massive increase we get for getting out of damage areas, 15% with Feline Swiftness, it's hands down the best in my opinion. The next row is all about healing. I like to go with Renewal because on a 2-minute cooldown we get a 30% maximum health heal in all shapeshift forms. Third line is all about disrupting the enemy. Mass Entanglement will spread them in place. Typhoon will blast your targets away. Very useful in dungeons because it can interrupt them and, blow away your target a bit. That's the one I go with. And then Fairy Swarm, which is an improved version of Fairy Fire that reduces your target's movement speed, and it replaces Fairy Fire, which if you don't know it, is an ability that reduces our target's armor. So it depends what the fight is, etc. for this one, but Typhoon is the best in my opinion. We're going to be going with our Incarnation at level 60. This is hands down the best. In balance, we get Chosen of Elune. It's an improved Moonkin form where we gain 25% increased arcane and nature damage while an Eclipse is active. An Eclipse is something we'll be talking about in more detail shortly. Again, more utilities on line 75. I'm going with Vassal's Vortex. And then lastly, on the bottom one, we have Heart of the Wild. The main reason I love this is because at all times it gives us 6% extra stamina and agility, so therefore improving our survivability, but also our intellect as well. So just a hands down flat 6% bonus to our stats. When you do activate it, however, on a 6-minute cooldown, it increases all healing that you do and our ability to perform rolls outside of our normal spec. So, as you can see, it says non-balance, non-restoration. So we're in balance, so if we're doing non-balance spells, spell damage and hit chance are increased, and the mana cost of all damage spells is reduced. So we can use that as a slight damage increase every 6 minutes. On the Glyphs, we really don't have much either for us in here. The one I like to go with is Rebirth, because players resurrected with Rebirth are returned with 100% health, meaning we can get a battle res out and max health them in the middle of the fight, which helps out the healers a bit. Dash I'm going for because it reduces the cooldown of it by a minute, meaning we can get around a bit faster more often in battle. And then I'm going with Stampeding Roar, increasing the radius of it. Stampeding Roar is a ability that will increase the movement speed of us and our nearby allies. So just basically, if it's a huge arena we're in, more people can be affected by it. On the minor glyphs, I'm using Glyph of Stars, which is how I have this astral form, and not having to be an actual boomkin. And I also have Glyph of Grace, which means that Feline Grace reduces falling damage even when we're not in cat form, meaning we will actually have reduced falling damage in all forms. This is actually a slight survivability increase in, any fights where you may be flung up in the air. I can't really think of any off the top of my head, but it can happen. So it's just a good to have. The other minor ones don't really increase combat efficiency at all, and nor do the major ones. These are more utilities, but it's all we have available to us as a balanced druid in MoP. For Mists of Pandaria Classic, I'm teaming up with Zygor to give you 20% off with code Javier. Zygor gives you the fastest and most efficient leveling experience. As you can see here, looking at killing snow leopards, I can even click all the different waypoint coordinates to see the fastest way to get to the different areas they may be in. It can also look at flight paths and show me which ways to go, including all of the different travel options. And when choosing quest rewards, it can even tell me which is the best upgrade for me. And this will be even spec dependent. I can click on the gloves, complete the quest, and then it will even tell me to equip them and shows me how much attributes and stats I will gain by equipping these items. Maybe even talents. I can use the talent advisor with Zygor, simply clicking that I want to be an Affliction Warlock, and it's going to configure it automatically to show me the best leveling build for Affliction for me. The fun doesn't stop there though, because it's available for SOD, Classic, Retail, Leveling. I can choose zones I want to go into, and it'll tell me how to get there and do all of the leveling in that zone, even if you're going back to old zones that you've leveled out of. Dungeons, dailies, events, reputation, gold making, professions, pets and mounts, and achievements. You can use as little or as much as you like. And don't forget, you can get 20% off with code Javier and battle past everyone at lightning speed in Mr. Pandaria Classic. Now that that's out of the way, let's move on to the interesting bit, which is, of course, the actual rotation itself and what spells we're using. So Balanced Druid is really interesting. If you're new to it, or even if you're not, things have changed since Cataclysm going into MoP with our Eclipse. So, as you can see up here, we have a little bar with a 0 on it with a lunar and solar icon. And this is our energy. And we go into an Eclipse when we get to either side. So as you can see here on core abilities, Eclipse, your Wrath generates lunar energy, so our solar spell generates lunar energy, so the opposite, and Starfire now generates solar energy. When you reach 100 solar energy, you trigger a solar eclipse, increasing all nature damage done. When you reach 100 lunar energy, you trigger a lunar eclipse, increasing all arcane damage done, and transforming our hurricane into astral storm. When triggered, both lunar and solar eclipse grant 15% spell haste for 15 seconds and give you load mana. It may sound complex, but when I go through the rotation, it'll make a lot more sense. So the first two things we actually first want to do is keep up our Moonfire and our Sunfire on our targets at all time. So I'm going to use Moonfire, burns the enemy. This is a dot or damage over time, and then an additional amount over 14 seconds. Your Starfire and Star Surge critical strikes will extend Moonfire's duration. So Starfire here and Star Surge are actually going to extend our Moonfire duration whenever they crit. So just make sure that you're keeping this dot up on the target at all times, and you will be absolutely fine. So we're just keeping that up at all times, and the same with our Sunfire, which is basically the same, apart from our Wrath and Star Surge will extend the duration. So you don't really have to worry about it, the durations being extended. Just make sure that you're keeping them both up at all times. Then we have Star Surge. You're just going to use this on cooldown. And this is actually going to generate some of this energy for you. So you can see when I use Star Surge, I'm going to go all the way towards the sun. We're also going to use our Starfall on cooldown as well. This is an AoE, Area of Effect spell, dealing arcane damage and last 10 seconds, maximum 20 stars. Triggering a lunar eclipse will also reset the cooldown. Okay, so now that we've gone through that, keeping up the dots, and using our Star Surge and Starfall on cooldown whenever they are available, we can now actually look at the main rotation of our energy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep using my Wrath until we basically go into a lunar eclipse, which is when it reaches the whole way. And because you can see some spells are highlighted. So one thing to note, when one of your dots, Moonfire or Sunfire, is highlighted because we're in a lunar eclipse, re-dot it onto the target. So keep Sunfire and Moonfire up at all times. But basically, if you go into a lunar eclipse and your Moonfire is lit up, then refresh the Moonfire on the target. It will basically do more damage. Same way that when we go all the way into a solar eclipse, you would refresh your Sunfire, even if it's already up on the target. Otherwise, refresh them whenever they run out. Of course, our Starfall is now enhanced because we're in a lunar eclipse, but as I said before, use it on cooldown whenever you can anyway. So even though I'm saying it's more important to use it when it's highlighted, you'd be using it on cooldown anyway, so you don't have to think about that. Now, as we can see, we're in a lunar eclipse. The damage done by arcane spells is increased, and it will be cancelled when balance energy reaches 0. Now, Starfire is also increased damage. So what we would do here is, again, refresh our Moonfire, make sure our Sunfire is still up. We're still using Star Surge and Starfall on cooldown, but now we're going to start using Starfire. And what this is going to do is start bringing us out of our eclipse and into a solar eclipse. So we just keep going with Starfire, basically until we reach a solar eclipse. Make sure we're still using Star Surge, etc. on cooldown. And once I use my Starfire once more, we're now in a solar eclipse. So obviously keep your Moonfire up, but make sure you're refreshing Sunfire, no matter the duration left, in a solar eclipse. And then we just start using Wrath and going back the other way. So you're basically seesawing between solar and lunar eclipses. And that is basically the rotation. One thing to note is, because now that you should understand the eclipse, we have Astral Communion. This is a channeled spell, as you can see, for a few seconds, and it will give you 25 lunar or solar energy, whichever way you are going. Now, in my opinion, it's a waste of time, so you can use it before you go into combat to get yourself a little bit ahead of the game into your first eclipse. And then you just start going back the other way, so using your cooldowns. And then we're going to start using, Starfire to go into a solar eclipse again. Once you get all the way over, go back to go into a lunar eclipse. So it's quite obvious what you need to do in Balanced Druid, because it highlights the spells you're pretty much using a lot, and which way you're going. So now we're going to go on to our 2 cooldowns, Incarnation Chosen of Elune and Celestial Alignment. Now this can get quite complex. Number 1, you want to use Celestial Alignment on cooldown, but make sure you reapply Sunfire and Moonfire before using Celestial Alignment. It grants you the simultaneous damage benefit of both lunar and solar eclipse and increases damage done. Casting Moonfire also applies the periodic damage effect of your Sunfire. So when Celestial Alignment is active, Moonfire will also add Sunfire, so you don't need to worry about using Sunfire when you're in Celestial Alignment. So when you're in your Celestial Alignment, I've realised I've just misspoke. When you're in the Celestial Alignment, make sure you reapply your Moonfire, which subsequently adds Sunfire, before Celestial Alignment ends to make sure that the whole dot gets the maximum damage bonus. So like if there's like 2 seconds left, quickly use your Moonfire to make sure that your Moonfire and Sunfire get reapplied at the higher damage, is what I'm saying. Now, it does give you a benefit to both eclipses, meaning that while you're actually in it, your solar energy will not, or lunar energy will not go either way. It'll be stuck at 0, but you do have the benefit of both eclipses when in it. So what you should be spamming in your Celestial Alignment window is using Star Surge on cooldown still, and then you'll be using Starfire. So Starfire rather than Wrath, always when you're in your Celestial Alignment. Now, you may think that you should use Incarnation Chosen of Elune and your Celestial Alignment together, and that is sort of true. What you'll notice is that Celestial Alignment lasts 15 seconds, whereas Incarnation Chosen of Elune lasts 30 seconds. So what you actually want to do here is you want to use Incarnation Chosen of Elune as soon as you go into an eclipse. So I'm in an eclipse now at the full capacity with solar, and I would use Incarnation Chosen of Elune, and then I would start using, my Wrath and making sure everything's up still, and going into the normal rotation. And then when you've got 15 seconds left, then you would go into Celestial Alignment, making sure that you get the full 15 seconds of both of them together. And that's how you use your 2 main cooldowns. The reason we do this is because if you use Celestial Alignment first, you're in both eclipses for 15 seconds, which is great with your Chosen of Elune, but when Celestial Alignment ends, you then are left at 0 energy with no eclipse, and 15 seconds left on Chosen of Elune, and you're spending a lot of that trying to get into your next eclipse. Whereas if we immediately use Chosen of Elune as soon as we go into an eclipse, we are guaranteed that we are going to be in our eclipse for a while, and then we've got 15 seconds of Celestial Alignment in both eclipses, meaning that we're going to get probably 20 to 25 seconds of being in an eclipse with our Chosen of Elune. Whereas if we done it the other way around, we actually end up out of an eclipse for a lot longer with our Chosen of Elune, and some of it is wasted. Hopefully that makes sense. So just to recap on the rotation, because it is fairly complex, before you go into combat, use Astral Communion to get some energy. Then you're going to use your Moonfire and Sunfire and keep these up at all times. Use Star Surge on cooldown and use Starfall on cooldown as well. Once you go into an Eclipse, you're going to use the spell that is highlighted as much as possible, making sure that you're still refreshing your your Moonfire and Sunfire, and making sure that when you go into the relevant Eclipse, you refresh your Moonfire or Sunfire once, depending on which one it is. And then you're just going to use the spell that's highlighted to go all the way to the other way, until you go into an Eclipse again. So I'm going to keep using Starfire now, making sure that I'm keeping up both Moonfire and Sunfire. Sunfire is going to be refreshed now because it's in an Eclipse. And now I'm going to be using my Wrath until we go all the way into a Lunar Eclipse, making sure I refresh Moonfire and also Sunfire, and then using Star Surge on cooldown, and then keep using your Wrath. Now, Chosen of Elune and Celestial Alignment are both on a 3-minute cooldown, so they should come off cooldown at about the same time. And there we go. That is the main rotation. Looking at the cooldowns that we have outside of that, you've got Wild Mushroom, where you can place a Wild Mushroom, as you can see. You can actually click this and do 3 of them at once, and then you can detonate them with the Wild Mushroom Detonate. Use this pretty much for AoE instances only. And that's the real only chains we're using on AoE. Starfall already does AoE, and then dot up with Moonfire and Sunfire as many mobs as you can. We have Nature's Swiftness, which when activated will give you an instant rebirth, etc. I would say to use it on rebirth to get an instant battle res in times where it is really, urgent. Renewal instantly heals you for 30% of maximum health. We've got Heart of the Wild, which was discussed earlier. Bark Skin, reducing all damage taken by 20%. Don't forget you can use Bear Form and things like that, which can be helpful for defenses as well. Innovate will give a healer a lot of mana back, so you can use that on your healers. And you can also help out the raid sometimes with Tranquility, which is a massive heal if called out by your raid leader. Other things we have is Remove Corruption, removing all curse and poison effects. You may want to help out your healer if needed with this. Solar Beam is a massive silence. It's actually one of the best in the game. It has a minute cooldown, which you may think is terrible for an interrupt. But actually, as a druid, because it's interrupting in this whole area, it's one of the best interrupts in the game. We have Typhoon, Ursul's Vortex, I've already spoken about. And we've got some cool passives as well. Balance of Power grants hit equal to any spirit gained from items or effects. Celestial Focus reduces the pushback when damaging attacks while casting Wrath and Starfire and some of our other spells. Our Eclipses, which we obviously know about now. Euphoria, when not in an Eclipse space, your Wrath, Starfire and Star Surge generate double the normal amount of energy, meaning when you're out of an Eclipse, you will get into there quite fast. Feline Swiftness, that's the talent we took. Killer Instinct grants 100% of your intellect as agility when you go into bear form or cat form, so you will actually gain that if you do go into other forms. Lunar Shower, very interesting one here. When you cast Moonfire or Sunfire, you gain Lunar Shower. This increases the direct damage done by your Moonfire and Sunfire spells, and reduces the mana cost by 30% and can stack up to 3 times. Increases bonus damage from Eclipses massively on Mastery Total Eclipse. Natural Insight increases your mana pool massively. Alkin Frenzy, attack stuns you while in Moonkin form have a chance to make you go into a frenzy, increasing your damage and causing you to be immune to pushback, etc. And then lastly, we have Shooting Stars, where you have a chance to deal critical periodic damage with your Moonfire or Sunfire to instantly reset the cooldown of your Star Surge, etc. And that's what I mentioned at the start of the rotation part of the video. We also get a really, really, really interesting spell in Mr. Pandaria, which is Symbiosis. It's on a 6-second cooldown, it lasts for an hour, and you use it on somebody else, and you basically gain their, one of their spells. They must be in your party or raid group. The person I would recommend you put it on is maybe a mage with mirror image, that's what you'll get. Maybe a hunter with misdirection, so you can misdirect threat to a tank. Or any classes that give defensives, etc. And it does last an entire hour. So just to recap there, it creates a symbiotic limp which grants the Druid an ability belonging to the target's class, varying by the Druid's specialisation. Also grants the target one Druid ability based on their role and combat role as well. It's really, really interesting spell. Now that we know what we're doing, let's see how we can actually do it. No, that didn't make any sense. We're going to look at stat priorities, okay? So intellect, of course, wherever it is, here it is our major stat. It increases our spell power and our spell critical hit chance. So it increases our crit, it increases how much damage our spells do. It's pretty obvious. Now, the second one is going to be hit rating, so that we can actually hit our enemies. At level 90 in Mists of Pandaria, you need 5100 hit rating to reach the spell hit cap. Okay, so 5100. Do be aware, though, however, that I did mention that we have a passive balance of power grants hit equal to any spirit gained. So spirit will also equal hit, meaning our second top priority is spirit or hit rating equally. Once you've hit 5100 hit and hit the hit cap, you then want to go for haste. Now, haste is interesting. Moonfire and Sunfire will actually do more ticks of damage in the same time, so they kind of tick over quicker with more haste. And then once you hit that rating, after reaching 10 ticks, up from the default of 7, you would then go to critical strike. TLDR, once you get 35% haste, you want to switch over to crit, being your third stat. But before that break point, it's going to be haste. Don't forget, however, that when we're in Moonkin form here, while in this form, you increase the spell haste of all party and raid members by 5%. So don't forget about that. And then after haste, it's just basically going to be crit chance and also then mastery at the very bottom. Mastery increasing the bonus damage from your eclipses. Now we're going to look at your gems and enchants and things like that to improve obviously the gear that you do have. So for your meta gem, you're simply going to go for a revitalizing primal diamond. If you are struggling to reach the soft haste cap that I previously just mentioned, then go for a quick sun's radiance or perfect quick sunstone. If you are a jewel crafter, you've got a quick serpent's eye. Otherwise, you're just going to use a smooth sun's radiance, etc. Again, in a red slot, we can go for the reckless vermilion onyx, etc. if we're trying to reach that haste cap still, and then it's a potent one if not. If we're trying to get through the hit cap through reforging and can't do it, then it's going to be a sparkling river's heart. Otherwise, we're just going to use a misty wild jade or perfect misty alexandrite, etc. on our gems. For enchants, we actually have some good ones on the shoulders, the Greater Crane Wing inscriptions. And if you do have inscription, the Secret Crane Wing inscription will be the best. On the back, we can go with superior intellect or light weave embroidery if you're a tailor, glorious stats on the chest, superior intellect on your wrists, or fur lining for intellect if you are a leather worker. And if you're a blacksmith, you can add an extra socket, which is sort of an enchant. On the hands, I would go through superior mastery or haste, depending on what you need. It could even be expertise, which is for your haste cap, because expertise now equals hit in Mists of Pandaria. Again, you can add a socket, or if you are an engineer, you can add synapse springs. On the waist, you can add a living steel belt buckle. This isn't from a profession. This is actually just something everyone can get. And on the legs, we're going to put greater pearlescent spell thread. Or if you're poor, pearlescent spell thread instead, and sanctified as a tailor. There's Pandaran step for the feet, and if you have an enchanting, we can put greater intellect on both of our rings. Then on your weapon, you're going to put Jade Spirit, Elemental Force, or Windsong, again depending on how expensive they are, especially if it's at the start of the expansion versus the end. And on your offhand, you can also put Major Intellect if you are using an offhand. For food, it's going to be the Great Pandaran Banquet, giving you 275 intellect. If not, there is a Mogu fish stew, braised turtle, or Banquet of the Pot. For flasks, you are going to be using Flask of the Warm Sun. This is going to increase intellect by 1,000 for 1 hour. And for your potions, it's going to be the Jade Serpent, increasing intellect by 4,000 for 25 seconds. Regarding what profession you might want to take, they all pretty much add about 320 intellect, so it's completely up to you. Herbalism will give you 480 haste through something called Lifeblood, which can be really, really nice as a balanced druid. However, I do believe that the intellect is going to be a lot better for you. Dual crafting can give you about 320 critical strike through the smooth serpent's eyes. And blacksmithing gives you 640 critical strike through 2 extra sockets on your bracer and gloves, which you can then put, extra gems into. Tailoring's quite good because it gives you the embroideries, which gives you 320 intellect. The only one is the fur lining with leatherworking gives you 330 intellect, so a teeny tiny increase of 10 intellect over the other ones. So it's completely up to you.